Private practice might seem like it's on the ropes, but new ones actually start all the time. Who are the successful ones? Well, they're those that weigh out the pros and cons and really think through the business side of the practice. My guest today helps physicians do just that, figuring out those questions and what the answers are, and he's going to share some of his thinking with us. I'm Carl White, principal at Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. It's usually what they want, but care is better when it's the providers of care who own the practice as opposed to anybody else, because then all of the decisions are being made by those who are truly putting the patients first, whether it's clinical decisions, business decisions, whatever it might be. Those who are providing the care are those who are making the decisions. My guest today is Adam Middleton. Adam has committed his entire professional career to healthcare, working at for-profit and not-for-profit hospitals and as a consultant to physicians and healthcare-related businesses. Since 2008, Adam has consulted with emerging businesses in leadership positions, physician practices, post-acute providers, and hospitals, with a focus on management, operations, finance, and strategic planning. He has extensive experience in physician compensation, including contracting and structures. Through his leadership in the Healthcare Advisory Network, he assists hospitals and practices determine fair market compensation and compliance issues that surround employment practices, among other things. Adam, thanks for coming back on Practice Care.
Thanks for having me back, Carl.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. Kind of a quick hit second episode here. We've got a lot to talk about, pros and cons of starting a private practice. Large topic. We're going to try to bite-size it down. But first, help us get to know you a bit better. That's the bio you gave me, but that's what I asked for, is a bit brief. So fill in some of the gaps for us.
Sure, appreciate it very much. Yeah, been doing this for a very long time, and always enjoy working with physicians and entrepreneurs. I know that that's our topic today is whether or not you're going to start your business. So basically to add some to the bio, really the first time I really understood and started working with physicians that were entrepreneurial was actually when I was a hospital administrator. So please forgive me. But I worked with a company called MedCath, and we partnered with physicians across the country to open up heart hospitals. And it was really interesting because it was a chance to work with some of them were small practices, maybe 2 or 3 physician cardiologists in a practice, to very large practices that had multiple cardiologists or cardiovascular surgeons. So I really got to understand how they were thinking about business, not only from the clinical side, but what was really kind of fulfilling in that role was that the clinical side always came first. And even though they were there to be entrepreneurs and to do something different, the whole reason and vision they went about doing it was really to bring better clinical solutions to the patient. So it was really a fun experience for me to start working with physicians kind of inside of their practices, because as we got to know each other more and more, if they were having a practice issue, they would come to us for assistance and help, and how we could do that. So we actually kind of did our own little consulting things, with the practice, to make sure that they were running effectively or efficiently. So that was kind of my first step into the provider side and how they manage a practice and how they think about the business side.
Right.
So that's kind of maybe a little extra add to the bio. I know we
Yeah.
talked a little bit more about kids and grandkids and all that the last time.
Right. So physician-owned hospitals, that's what these were.
Yes. Yes. They were a partnership between a main company and a physician-owned hospitals. And if you look back in history, the first hospitals that were ever built and run were owned by physicians. They weren't by corporations.
Yeah. It's when you hear that, when I hear that, maybe I'm out of touch, but it just feels like a hard concept to wrap your head around. It sounds awesome. But it just seems like, wow, that's not what I would expect today here in 2025, which good or bad.
Yeah. And there are still lots of physician-owned hospitals out there.
Okay.
So it's just, they're usually niche hospitals, whether they're cardiovascular or orthopedic, but there are some that are still remaining.
Right. Oh, good. Fight the fight. So let's get into it. Pros and cons of starting a private practice. Large topic. I guess, I started this by saying it might seem like private practice is on the ropes, but maybe not. So what does the current environment look like? And I don't know if it breaks down by different specialties or what, but just help us, you see more than any one listener does for the most part. Certainly me. Break it down for us.
Sure. Yeah, it does kind of break down by specialty,
Hmm.
and there are a lot of factors that are going into the decision whether or not you want to start your own practice. What I am seeing, and talking with other colleagues, is typically it's a physician that is kind of suffering probably some corporate burnout. They may have gone into a situation where their practice might have been bought by private equity, or they merged into a hospital and now they're being run by a hospital system,
Hmm.
versus their traditional way that they were running their practice.
Hmm.
A lot of them are probably non-partners, so there might be junior physicians that are inside of a practice that got bought, and they just don't like the way that it is now, and they
Hmm.
don't like kind of that corporate environment. So they're choosing, with their feet,
Hmm.
to start their own practices.
Okay.
Um, yeah, the other area that is really growing quite a bit is actually probably even more so than some of the other startups, are family practice physicians that are basically just fed up with the payer environment and the high cost of staff and the high cost of supplies, while their reimbursements keep decreasing,
Hmm.
and they're moving either into a concierge or a direct primary care model.
Hmm.
And with that, it truly is starting a whole new practice.
Hmm.
They're dropping their tax ID number and starting over with a new tax ID.
Yeah.
To some of them, you can do it without, but it's just that kind of gets in the nitty gritty.
Hmm.
But it's a really dynamic environment that's
Hmm.
out there right now, where there's a lot of moving pieces. And there are the pros, but there's definitely some cons to doing this.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned concierge and DPC. So the recent legislation that passed for HSA dollars, you can now put that toward with caps, but you can put that towards the membership fees, whereas before you could not. And I'm not sure if that applies to FSA dollars also. I've seen definitely HSA, but in any event, it's on the one, in my personal opinion, it's a nice recognition of a really good model. On the other hand, it's too bad that traditional primary care continues just to get ignored or squeezed or whatever, because I don't know, in life, the sooner you attack a problem, the easier and cheaper it is to solve. And that's the whole point of primary care, but
Right.
not so on the insurance side. It's too bad. Um, so, I mean, when you think about pros and cons and kind of, I guess the biggest concerns, what would you say? I mean, it's such a large topic, how do you figure out where to start? What are some of those concerns? How do you break this down? So let's take the junior doctor that wants to come back out, and junior doctor X says, I'm done with this corporate thing. You know, now what? Should I
Yeah.
really do
Um,
this? Should I go open my own? Should I go join a private? Like, how do I we're not going to solve this today in this episode, but how do I start to make a good decision rather than a rash decision?
First, we start with a really good lunch. So actually just did this with a physician just a
Don't make
week
decisions
ago.
on an empty stomach. Is that what
Don't make decisions on empty stomach. So yeah, I actually had a physician contact me about 3 weeks ago. We sat down about a week and a half ago now, I think it was. And yeah, we did. We sat down over lunch and we talked for almost 2 hours.
Hmm.
And it was a matter of really understanding what his situation was, what he was coming out of, understanding, his non-competes and
Hmm.
where he could go to practice, and how he could practice. Could he do things virtually for a while? Could he not? So there's lots of those questions, which I'm not
Hmm.
an attorney. Actually hooked him up with one of our National Society attorneys
Yeah.
just to have that follow-up
Hmm.
conversation.
Hmm.
But then it was a matter of, what is really your vision? What is your
Hmm.
goal? I think that one of the things that any entrepreneur or somebody that is going to be starting their own business, which probably synonyms there, but what is truly your goal?
Hmm.
What's your vision? Because if you don't have a clear goal and vision as to what you're going to do, you'll never meet it.
Yeah.
So that's actually one of the first things I do, is when I sit down with a physician or an APP that wants to start their own business, because there's lots of those going on now too.
Yeah.
It's really a matter of what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What is the end goal of this practice? Are you building this up so you can go sell it? Or are you
Hmm.
building this up that this is going to be your legacy?
Hmm.
So we really try to hone into that. We also start talking. about some of the important pieces of, okay, how are you actually going to finance this? What are
Yeah.
the things that you're going to do to make this thing work?
Hmm.
So I think that the majority of that from the physicians that I'm speaking with, it really is a matter of they want their own autonomy and they want
Hmm.
their own control of their own destiny.
Hmm.
So many of them are coming out of either a hospital system that is telling them you must do this way,
Hmm.
or a PE company which is saying you've got to see X amount of patients per day. We don't care that you're not being that that this person may have a problem that's going to take you twice as long. Well, that doesn't matter. You still have to hit your numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that more and more often.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, there's lots of stories out there. Talking with a physician just the other day. I actually
Hmm.
ran into him over the weekend. First time we actually met face to face, and it was purely by chance.
Hmm.
And he was, um, we've been chatting quite a bit, but his situation, owned by a hospital system, he has no control of the staff, and
Hmm.
he's got a practice administrator slash office manager that he has no, he's got no power over. And in his words, she doesn't know anything about running a practice.
Hmm.
So he can't do anything about it. It's an HR issue. His input doesn't matter, and he's going to leave the system.
Yeah.
So they're going to lose one of their top docs just because of his frustration of
Hmm.
lack of control inside of the practice, inside the office. And this is a gentleman that's got an MBA. He knows business.
Yeah, and it's too bad that he's not getting listened more to. I mean, one thing you said, the first thing you said is you got to have a vision, and it just struck me. Leaving a bad situation is not a vision for the new situation. They're unrelated.
Correct.
If your vision is I got to get out of here, you can quit today and you've fulfilled your vision if that's really all it is. But the vision for the practice that you want to own and grow and thrive is totally different. That's really kind of what we're talking about here. Um, wait. Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of points. I mean, where do you start? Like, what are the first two or three
Sure.
things? Yeah.
Yes. So, really, from a starting point, once we do kind of have, okay, what do you want to do? What's your vision?
Hmm.
Because some of that's a matter of, are you going to open one office? You're going to open six.
Hmm.
Are you going to have APPs with you, or are you going to do this all on your own with MA? So
Hmm.
we start to structure that way, and of
Hmm.
course, this also gets into what's your specialty, because
Hmm.
depending upon the specialty, we'll also bring in a couple of my other subject matter experts inside of Healthcare Advisory Network to do some market surveys to say, you know, will it even fly here? So if you're an orthopedic surgeon and you want to come in and start your own practice and maybe start your own ASC, well,
Hmm.
let's see what the market can bear. So,
Is there
what
enough demand for what you have? Pretty
is there
simple.
enough
Yeah.
demand? Um, are you what is your value prop coming in?
Hmm.
Are you doing procedures that nobody else does? So we look at all of that. So that's kind of a first wave
Hmm.
of, here's your vision. Who are you? What's going to be your value proposition? Then we
Hmm.
get into the financial aspect. So
Hmm.
really, the next point of that is we start building out, financial pro forma to say, all right, how many patients do you need to see? If this is going to be your average reimbursement, are you going to push more towards the Medicare population? You're going after
Hmm.
more commercial patients. Are you
Hmm.
doing DPC? What does that mean? What
Hmm.
can you raise? So we do the finance piece first, really kind of understanding what that's going to be, because that's also going to show them what is going to be the ramp up and how much cash are they going to need to potentially
Hmm.
open a practice. Because
Hmm.
you open the practice on August 1st, you start seeing patients, even if we've got you all lined up with all the payers, you're
Hmm.
not going to see any cash until August 30th or maybe sometime into
It's
September.
true. That's true.
So
Just on the
how, and
reimbursement
you've
lag,
got,
right?
yeah, and then you've got all the startup cost prior
Hmm.
to that even August 1st date. So
Yeah.
that's all part of the financial pro forma of, here's your cash flow. Do you need to, can you self fund this? Are you going to need to get an SBA loan? Or are you going to
Hmm.
go, get a traditional line of credit? There's all of those pieces, have to come into play and into that conversation, because that's where you start to get into those business risk.
Right.
What if the patients don't come? How long can you,
You just
how
pound
long
on the
does it take
marketing
to
company.
ramp those
That's what,
patients up?
yeah. Yeah, right. Um,
Yeah.
so a lot of big, like, what's your vision? Do you want to do this or that? Do you want to what do you do when I got to imagine a healthy proportion of clients say, I don't know. Do you say here are a few options, let's react to
Mhm.
them? Like, how do you get I don't know into a choice? Like they have to make a
Right. Yeah.
choice. So how do
We
you
do some visioning. So
okay.
there is, I've got a couple different platforms and programs that I've used over the years to help entrepreneurs when it comes to what is their vision.
Hmm.
There's a gentleman here in Dayton, Ohio, that created a system called, oh shoot, I'm blanking out now. Um, the Wow Business.
The wow business.
It's
Okay.
kind of an interesting name and title.
Yeah.
Great consultant. And sometimes I'll walk them through his process
Okay.
of trying that vision, and it's built for any business owner
Hmm.
that either owns their own business or wants to start one. So
Hmm.
it goes through the whole 9 yards of the vision piece, but also kind of how to run that company and turn it into a really profitable and well run business. So I'll use some of those tools that are out there
Hmm.
to really kind of help hone in as to what you want to do and trust me, I'll be the first person to tell them that, what, this isn't going to work.
I was just going to ask, like, what are some of the cons? Like, when do you find yourself saying, you know what, Dr. Client X, I just don't think you shouldn't do this now. You shouldn't do what, give us a couple of examples of, I was going to ask you, what are
Yeah, I
some
think
mistakes you see
some
people
good
make, but this
examples
is
of
a good
that
one
really is
too.
when you start to look at, sometimes it's the personality of the provider. You kind of said it early, just because you're not happy doesn't mean you should just go start your own.
Yeah.
So it might be you might not be happy in this situation, but if you or your spouse have a low risk tolerance, you
Mm,
might be better off just to say, you know what, I'm unhappy in this practice here. Maybe I should just move over to practice,
another one.
across the street or down the road, outside of my non-compete area.
Hmm.
Depends on your contract. Please don't sign non-competes if you don't have to. If you
Mm.
do, don't sign ridiculous ones.
Review
Make
the
sure you
things you're signing first. We've talked about this before.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just have
Review
somebody read,
that and
yeah, know what you're signing. Yeah.
yeah, negotiate those because providers can get locked into some really bad non-competes, and even if those non-competes won't hold up in court,
Hmm.
they're
That's five
very
years.
expensive to fight.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just to hit on, go back to concierge and TPC for a second. One of the, say the best ways to start one of those, your traditional family medicine practice, you switch and your patient panel, some of which stays with you in the new model. But if you're moving from a corporate entity, well, it's hard to tell them, like, the corporate entity doesn't want to lose any of those patients. So you may not be able
Well,
to
yeah, and
do
you're
that.
probably contractually restricted from soliciting those patients.
Exactly. And that's going to,
Right.
well, that's a
Right.
different startup model then, isn't it? So
Yes.
need to be eyes wide
Yeah.
open about that. Yeah.
That's another con.
Yeah. That's another
Yeah.
con.
So a lot of it really is, whether or not you say yay or nay to it. Some of it's going to be, what is your appetite for risk?
Hmm.
Um, what is your financial situation that you're in?
Hmm.
If you're fresh out of school and you have $300,000 to the bank already for your school loans, are you going to jump in and take out another $250,000 loan to start your business?
Hmm.
Maybe
Maybe.
if all things look good and you like
Hmm.
and you can handle the risk, that's fine.
Hmm.
But those are part of the concerns that you have. The other piece of it, Carl, when you kind of come to the concerns of saying yay or nay, it's not just the financial risk, but there's there is the benefit and the pro of being your own boss, and then there's the con of being your own boss.
Hmm.
So the pros, you get to make the decisions.
Hmm.
You are captain of the ship.
Hmm.
So whether it sinks or floats, you're the
You're
one that's
captain.
actually ultimately
Yeah.
responsible for that.
Yeah.
To do that, as the practice grows, you need to put good people around you. You got to have a
Hmm.
good first mate,
Hmm.
because you've got to be able to make sure that your focus is going to be on the clinical side, seeing the patients, doing the productivity things that
Yeah.
make the practice money,
Yeah.
while then you've got to delegate and be able to release that and
Hmm.
delegate it. And
Hmm.
you got to find somebody that you can trust and do.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of the pro is that, yeah, you are your own boss, but
Hmm.
the con of that being your own boss, all of the tasks end up falling to you ultimately.
Yeah.
So especially when you're first starting out, I'm working with a brand new doc. Met with her yesterday. She just They launched about a month ago, and they actually just flipped on Epic into their practice through the community portal.
Hmm.
And she's she's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to do.
Hmm.
And she's doing it. She's rocking it. She's already up to 75 patients a week. So boom, I knew she would.
Hmm.
But it's a matter of, okay, now how do we do payroll?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to sign up for workers comp.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't do this or that.
Yeah.
So those things can snowball, and if you don't have the patience and the frankly the ability to do that and get it done,
Hmm.
it can be a real burden mentally. And your burnout switches from the
Yeah.
PE burnout to the, oh my gosh, I got to do what tax form now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are the things that you have to think about.
Yeah. And to harp on the people part for a second, probably the most difficult part, one of the most difficult parts, finding good people in a normal unemployment environment, but the past few years have been abnormal. Finding and keeping good people it's so hard. I can't say I'm terribly good at the people side of things, but I just know that it's really, really hard. Um, find people you can trust who don't need to be told what to do, like structuring jobs. I mean, it's, I don't know what your take on this is, but I've looked at the job description for practice manager a few times. There's 5 or 6 jobs in there. And
Mhm.
it's a wonder anybody takes it. It's a wonder anybody's, it's like there's 5 or 6 jobs. It's like the dumping ground for all things I don't want to do. That's sort of my take on it. It's hard. The people side's hard. I mean, what do you see as like, what's your take on, I mean, not add more to that, I guess. What are you
Oh,
seeing out
sure.
there?
Yeah. So there's always the challenge of staffing and getting the right staff.
Hmm.
You and I have sat through plenty of National Society of Certified Healthcare Business Consultant meetings where we tell the horror stories,
Yes, that's
the
true.
what the healthcare stories.
If
Amanda's
people just
favorite.
would take, we're not going to tell any stories today, but I always look at these and go, person X who just got arrested, if you just took 1/10 of the energy and did your job, because that's all
Yeah.
it would take for all the energy you're doing to be fraudulent. Oh my God. You'd have a much
Right.
easier life. You just did your job with this.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's part of it, making sure you get the right people.
Hmm.
Um, there's also a matter of kind of, you talked about job description. So yeah, you've got to have those pieces correct.
Hmm.
Um, I can't recommend more is to check references.
Mm.
So oftentimes people will hire somebody because the resume looks really good and they interview really good. Hey, I've been trapped by it myself where, my gosh, this is the perfect person.
Yeah.
And I might check one reference and go, ha, good, I'm moving on. Got
Hmm.
the good one here.
Hmm.
And then you find out, 6 months later that no, this really wasn't a good hire. And they
That
might
one's a
have,
thief. Yeah. I just didn't figure
yeah,
that out.
or
Yeah.
they're manipulative or whatever. So you got to be
Yeah.
really careful with that. At some point, you do have to just trust to say, okay, here we go. But where I think that it's very important to do is that if you do see problems with an employee, face
Hmm.
them early.
Hmm.
Don't let it linger, because
Hmm.
the longer it lingers, the harder it is to make those decisions that are hard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hiring staff, it's very competitive.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what market you're in. If you're trying to get a good MA or a good nurse that's going to come into your practice,
Hmm.
expect to pay a little bit above market. Just
Hmm.
because if you don't, as soon as that person has an opportunity to get more, they'll take more. And
Hmm.
people will move. People will move for a quarter an hour
Mm.
if they think the opportunity is better, and if they're not really happy with where they're at, if it's kind of a mediocre job and your culture is not great,
Yeah.
and if they get an opportunity to make 25 cents more an hour somewhere, they'll go make it.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing to think about from a staffing perspective is you got to get creative when it comes to the benefits,
Mm.
because your hourly rate is fine. And most practices, frankly, unless they're, a very large practice or specialty practice that's making a good margin, they
Hmm.
can't do a whole lot when it comes to healthcare benefits and
Yeah.
dental benefits and others. So try to get creative. Do some things that are helpful to the staff, whether it's, hey, on a monthly basis, we can't give you health insurance, but on a monthly basis, we're going to fund an HSA for $500 or
Hmm.
an ICRA or something like that, where you can say, hey, we can't afford all this, but we're going to help you in some way. So,
Yeah.
here's $500, go buy your own health insurance. Just show us that, give us the receipt that,
Yep.
You're not just going to
Yeah.
Amazon.com and spending it.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so those are types of things. There's other benefits that are out there that I can set up with practices where, they can get free telehealth, for the
Hmm.
practice, for the employees.
Hmm.
Um, it's not free to practice, but free to the
Yeah.
employee,
Yeah.
but at a really reduced
Yeah.
cost,
Yeah.
because you've got to be able to incentivize in some way. The other piece is, frankly, you got to recognize those people when they're doing a good job. So
Hmm.
I know we're probably getting more into a staffing conversation, but
Yeah.
that's part of the
This is the
pro
environment.
and the part of the con. Is part
Yeah.
of running that business.
Yeah. And to tie a couple of ideas back, this is another reason to have a good vision. Um, People don't necessarily have to get paid the highest amount, but if they feel like they're part of something special, something different, um, that that can that can keep them. That can be
Right.
part of why they stay. If 25 cents an hour more, or a place with a bigger idea. Maybe I'll stay with the place with the bigger idea. It
Right.
can matter because you can't, you're a new practice. Your ability to pay, compete with the hospital, compete with larger entities. It's just, you're never going to win that war. It's a different way to get into it, to win that war. You're not going to win it on money, but you can win it on vision, culture, um, day-to-day environments. I want to just ask you a bit about contracts because that's how you get paid if you're insurance
Mhm.
based. I don't know if there's a pro or a con, maybe not quite framing it up, but just give us like the summary on, because we had a different episode, which will air live soon, all about payer strategy. Maybe that ties, I'm sure that ties in, but just, you know, uh, you ought to be ready to get paid on day one, obviously, but like, just give us a flavor of what it takes to get there. Because if you open your doors and you can't get paid, man, that's just a,
Right.
you
Yeah.
can't. I mean, you could, but you can't. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you are going after more of the traditional payer type of contracts, you have to make sure that you are timing this correctly.
Hmm.
It's going to take time to get these through the systems.
Hmm.
Every payer is a little bit different, but there's a time frame that you've got to go. So the first thing you do, make sure that you're getting straightened up with Medicare, making sure that you're signed up with them. If
Hmm.
you are going to take Medicaid, start that process. Medicare, typically, it's not a long process. Within 30, 45 days at the most, you should be able to get into
That's
Medicare, and
great.
sometimes even faster. Depends on what state you're in
Hmm.
for Medicaid. You got to
Hmm.
have Medicare first. Typically, there are a couple states you don't, but that's kind of an anomaly.
Yeah.
And then from a Medicaid perspective, if you are going to take CAID, that takes a while sometimes to get through the system, and
Hmm.
then you've got to go for, if they're in a managed care Medicaid state, then you've got to start contracting.
Okay.
So now the Medicaid and the commercial contracts and the MA contracts oftentimes are all on the same contract. So you can do those things parallel with some of the bigger payers.
Okay.
Um, but you do have to make sure that you are timing these things out because they can take an excessively long time. The other thing that I beg of practices, and just ran into this just last week with a practice, is they got set up, they got rolling. Then they were like, hey, we want to add this service line to what we're doing.
Hmm.
And when I said, well, you just started, so let me see your contracts. And they said, oh, well, this service line wasn't negotiated inside those contracts.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm sure that it was. So, and they're like, what do
Ooh.
you mean? I said, well, send me your contracts and I'll show you. And sure enough, every one of their contracts they sent me, it was it was basically every E&M code, every J code, every lab code. They were all in there, but they only concentrated on the one thing they were doing. They weren't thinking about what's going to happen in the future.
Got
So they're
it.
locked into those contracts for at least a year, some of them for 3 years.
Oh my God.
So, and the other thing is they didn't understand their rates. So
Mm.
they ended up signing contracts. A few of them had poor rates.
Okay. Like
So,
low
you
rates.
know, yeah, they're just, they're only a few months into opening and their eyes just got opened up wide that the they took contracts and signed them and were not aware of what those rates were.
So
Um,
this new service, did they just think about it after they opened, or were they kind of thinking about it, but
it
they
was in consideration, but now that they were open, they were like, okay, now we're ready to start doing this.
got it?
So I don't want to get too deep in the particulars of that
Yeah, that's
one, but
fine. Yeah.
yeah, it's just a matter of, okay, they're going to be stuck now for a good 9 months before they can can go open those contracts up to try to renegotiate and get some better rates. And that's an area that, this is rampant across the entire industry. So I'm not trying to just say, hey, that
Sure.
one practice, sorry, on them. Was working with another practice right now. The payer contracts are coming in,
Hmm.
and they just say, we're going to reimburse you at 100% of our market fee schedule. Well, what's that?
Hmm.
And then trying to actually get the insurance company, the payer, to send you what their market fee schedule is pulling hen's teeth. I was on the phone for 2 hours yesterday
It's too
with
bad.
one of the larger payers, and it was basically a circle of, oh, you got to talk to this person, got to talk to this person, well, I already talked to that person 3 times.
Hmm.
So getting those fee schedules for those particular markets, it's extremely difficult. But people say, oh, I'm getting 100. They see in the contract they're getting 100% of something, and they think, okay, that's good enough. Well, that 100% might be 77% of this year's Medicare.
So it's really low. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until you
Oh, it
have the raw
is.
data, the percentages don't matter.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
that's a huge area. The thing that you've got to be able to do is you've got to build your value proposition for those payers. You've got to
Hmm.
be able to pick the phone up, call them. Sometimes it's really, sometimes I'll have the provider on the phone with me, because they're the ones that are going to be seeing those patients, those
Hmm.
members for that payer,
Hmm.
and they can tell their story better than I can.
Hmm.
And it also shows the payer that that provider is serious about this conversation.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, that one phone call that might take 15 or 20 minutes. We prep the doc, prior to the call.
Yeah.
Here's the things to say. Here's the hot
Yeah.
buttons.
Yeah.
That 15 or 20-minute phone call can mean, two, three, four, five extra percentage points on what you're getting paid. Well, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it can be the most return on
Yeah.
investment 15 minutes of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when I kind of bring us back to the beginning of the pros and cons of starting a practice, I wonder if it's not so much the pros and cons. It's, I guess, if you've got a vision, you've got a real reason to do it rather than I'm running away from my current situation. It's not so much pros and cons, just having a good plan and checking off these things kind of one at a time. If I get good reimbursement, if I can find a good location, if I can, find a market opening in a certain geography, then you keep going. And I guess the cons come as if it's just too many strikes against some of these things. Um, the part that what you just said that was particularly interesting is if you're going to open, so day one, you're going to open and you're going to do procedures A through F, but you're thinking about the rest of the alphabet. Go negotiate them now. Like there's some just more planning, more of a maze, in our world, Adam, we can say we're going to offer a new service and tomorrow we just start charging for it. Well, it's upside down in the world of private practice where you've got to get approved unless, if you're going to go the insurance route. So does that sound fair? It's not so much a pro and con. It's got to have a vision. You got to have the risk appetite, and then you have to be super planful. And if you can figure out all that on your own, sure, better to probably work with somebody if you've never done it before, somebody who has like you, and say, here's the checklist of things to deal with to figure out if this can really be a viable, practice or not. That sound
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're right on there. You've got to be organized. You got to check all the boxes,
Mhm.
and we didn't even touch on, compliance issues and
Oh my
making
God.
sure all those things
You come back
are
for a
are
third
done. So
episode. Yeah.
yeah, there's a litany of things that have to be prepared for, and
Yeah.
you've got to be compliant from day one.
Hmm.
You can't think about it, 3 months later and go, oh, where's my HIPAA form?
Right. Where's that patient data? I think it's over in the
Yeah,
corner. Yeah.
yeah.
I
So
know
but you're spot on.
some of the things you were saying, like, who's your team? Need a good healthcare attorney, not a general business attorney. You need a healthcare attorney. It's totally separate. A lot of healthcare attorneys will do the general business stuff. That's the better mix than the other way around. Healthcare law is a separate body of law. You need a good accountant. You need a good a good payer consultant and other. So Dr. X, you can try to do all these things on your own. Nobody's saying you can't. It's just if you've never done something so complex before, maybe with your own livelihood is not the best place to try it going solo, but build a team as well,
Right.
So yes, a lot. What kind of time? I know maybe it differs by specialty. If I'm Dr. X and I fit the profile, I hate it here. I got to get out. I want to start something new. Rough a year, 2 years, six, what would you say? Look, doctor, give yourself X amount of time at least between the day you say I've had enough and the day the doors open?
Yeah, I would say that
I know it
I've had to
varies,
compress before for, one reason or the other. To get a door open in 90 days, you can, but you're not going to have your payer contracts.
Right.
You might be able to see Medicare patients and some of the CAIDs, but you're more than likely not going to have any commercial contracts. But if it's an emergency type of bailout and you got to get out and get your practice going, you
Hmm.
can do it. Um, and do some self-pay stuff potentially. But
Hmm.
the what I always say is I want 6 months.
Well,
I you know
that's
I
not as
want
long
six
as I thought
months.
you might say.
It'd be great to have 9, but if you're gonna, because the other thing you think about from a practice situation, if you're going to rent a place, you're going to have leasehold improvements. So you got to time all that stuff out.
Just
So
a build out could be
six
three,
months
four.
is six
Yeah.
months is to me it's kind of like a bare minimum unless you're going to rent someplace and just be able to walk right in and start working immediately.
Yeah.
But in that you're definitely going to have drawbacks when it comes to your payer contracting.
Hmm. And the build out and the choice of the selection of location and the go buy the equipment. Like it just, you, it seems to me 6 months is you've figured out, I know where I want to be. I am really clear on why I think I'm going to succeed in where I want to be. Um, yeah. And then it's kind of a race. Anything before we kind of wrap it up, anything you think we should have covered or touched on? We did hit a lot of ground.
I think that we hit a ton of it, and really, it's you kind of get into that. Okay, what's the personality of you as a
Mm.
provider? Is this going to make you happy?
Hmm.
And if it's going to make you happy to be on your own
Hmm.
and to be your own person, then go for it.
Hmm.
It's that's what you really have to think about is what is going to satisfy you. How are you going to be able to treat your patients in the way that you want to treat your patients?
Hmm.
So it gets back to that vision. If this
Hmm.
is my vision, this is what I want to go do.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Yeah. I love it. Where can somebody get started? So the profile of, Dr. X who's just frustrated or they're just, they want to make that change. What are sometimes people get really enthusiastic, but they just don't know where to start. Um, any super simple things they could do. Like one thing that comes to my mind is, talk to a few people that who've done it and just have
Mhm.
lunch. Are you glad you did it? What have you learned? Would you do it over again? Just you don't know what you don't know. Talk to people who are doing it, and that might just give you some insights you wouldn't get any other way.
Yeah, definitely. I actually did a webinar several months ago with a physician, an independent physician that started his own practice, and it was actually for a clinically integrated network. And it was, hey, if you want to go start your practice, you know, this is what happened with this doctor. These were the
Hmm.
things that he did wrong. These
Hmm.
were the things that he did right.
Hmm.
I hadn't met him before until actually he was up and rolling. We become good friends because, frankly, he had a lot of things that happened inside of his practice. He called me up and said, "Hey, can you help me?"
Hmm.
So yeah, talk to people that have done it. Talk to your colleagues. Ask them, especially in your market, if you can do it and do it confidentially. To say,
Hmm.
how are the payers treating you?
Hmm.
What is going on, with the staffing? What's
Yeah.
happening inside your practice? Is this a good idea to go
Hmm.
out and do? So,
Yeah.
talk to your colleagues that, some of them have been very successful and
Hmm.
you probably know in your market who those people are.
Right.
So, you know what? They probably love to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you
Yeah.
and talk through it
Yeah.
because most business people are usually pretty proud of what they've done. So,
Yeah.
they're happy to mentor and help others
Yeah.
get through that.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing to do.
Yeah. And the two questions I find just yield a lot of benefit are if you had to do it all over again, would you? And what would you do differently? If you, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently? And those can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, great
Um,
questions.
yeah. Adam, thank you. Thanks for coming back. This is really, I learned a lot. I live in my marketing world and I try to keep my finger on the pulse of other areas, but there's just so much going on. Thanks for coming on and kind of opening up a lot of eyes, hopefully, of listeners to this episode.
Oh, my pleasure, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we've got your contact information. We'll put it in the show notes for this episode. So anyone who wants to contact you, they've got a way to do it. Two quick points before we wrap up. One, subscribe to Practice Care if you haven't done it already. Practice Care is one word. We're everywhere, easy to find. That's the easiest way to get new episodes when we drop them every week. And secondly, if you've got experience on the business side of private practice, whether you serve practices like Adam or I, or you're a private practice owner yourself, all experience is good experience. We want you to come on Practice Care and tell the world about it. In the show notes for every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks, super easy, like a minute. Tell us what's on your mind. We'll get you scheduled as soon as possible. Thanks very much. And until next time.